Okay, extended school year services, because I think that even though there's been, this school closure, and that's just the buildings, it doesn't mean education has stopped, and that doesn't mean the requirements of the school has changed. It hasn't. It's just a little different. This is where I promote or ask people to please be understanding and flexible with their school staff and trying to work through these issues. Um, Let me go ahead and also say this, guys. If I catch wind, let's say one of you comes and says, James, please help me out. And I end up seeing to where, either through, some frantic excuse, panic excuse, if you're mean and virulent and sort of a jerk, uh, I'm going to be extremely um, put off. Let's say turned off. How about that? Let's use that term. Um, to the point where perhaps I'm not the good fit. All right. I don't have any problem holding schools accountable. Um, and I do that all the time, but I'm also just sort of a practical, reasonable kind of person as well. And I understand crazy situations like this that took everybody by surprise. And I'm not a gotcha guy. I'm not a gotcha attorney, and I'm also, even though it's stereotypical that I'm Italian, I'm also not in the revenge business, guys. I'm not. All right. I believe in this process. I believe in the IEP team collaboration. I believe that things can be accomplished when the school listens to the parents and are receptive to the parent input. There's so many aspects of the IDEA, which the the progressive forethought that went into the creation of that fits so well during this. If people understood the law and understood how to use it, I mean, the capability that the law already provides. The law already provides for video conference and conducting IEP meetings through video conferencing and also teleconferencing. It already provided for that way before this pandemic situation. So, quite frankly, nothing should have really changed other than how the school was approaching conducting these meetings on their side, not necessarily on the parent side. I've had many parents agree to have meetings over conference call or video conference. So, nothing's really changed, or nothing should really change. It's just now sort of on a mass scale, and that's okay. But let's be practical about the fact that this law and the IEP team already has within the IEP team so much flexibility to do what it needs to do to serve the child individually. So it's not, so this, as bad as this crisis is, guys, it also presents such a grand opportunity for the IEP team to actually try to figure out how to individually serve the child. And I will tell you, during this time, I expect many, many schools to fail miserably. Why? Because they were not even doing a good job when everything was fine. So I don't expect the bad schools, and I'm going to go ahead and say bad schools, bad administrators, and I'm not going to include the teachers because the teachers, by and large, are a product and victims too to bad leaders. And the bad leaders would be a bad special education director that is a poor leader, a poor manager, and shouldn't be in those positions. And I can name in Alabama, I can name about 10, my top 10. I'm not going to sit there and go down my list that I just think are bad leaders, bad communicators. And these kind of situations are not going to bode well for them because you can't be a despot and a tyrant and then enter a situation like this because now you have no one to command. Everybody's out of your ear, out of your eyesight, and everybody's sort of sprinkled all over the place. And most of the teachers don't like you. Guys, believe it or not, there's a lot of teachers that send me private messages, and I will never betray their trust, ever. That give me the skinny on some of the bad people that are out there that are making their life miserable and having them consider stopping being an educator. not because of the kids they serve, but because of the administration and the lack of support and the lack of aid support, the lack of training, the lack of third-party professionals that have an expertise in these areas that the teachers don't have. I expect those schools to fail. Okay? And some of you parents out there, you know what schools those are. I'm fairly transparent about which ones. I'm just not going to do it here. My point being is I do expect some to not rise to this occasion. I expect the majority, though, to rise. I expect the majority to come to the table with solutions and make best efforts, good faith efforts to solve these problems. Okay? And that includes Texas, New Mexico, all the places that we currently practice. But I am watching, but you need to keep good records, good documentation in your timeline of attempts to communicate. You need to do all those things, okay? So that when all this is over, you can sit there and make a good faith assessment on your end, whether or not the school was responsive to a standard sufficient. And that is my segue into what do we do about extended school year services? Because I imagine that many schools are going to use the summer as an opportunity to provide additional services for the weeks when it was just closed, which I think is smart. Now, look, as far as the extended school year standard, it's a recoupment standard by and large. Now, I will tell you the law doesn't mandate that it's a recoupment standard. That is such a myth that it's some kind of recoupment standard, meaning that if your child, during a long period of time, doesn't regress during, let's say, the first or 6-9 weeks or doesn't regain those skills within the first 6 or 9 weeks of the school year, then they're not eligible for ESY. That isn't true. See, when the law provided the ESY or extended school year standard, the recoupment standard was just an example. That's it. Here's an example. But so many schools and so many people that train teachers or train special education directors train them as though that is the standard. And it is not the standard. It is just an example of a standard that you could use. It tends to be the one that everybody uses. Why? Because everybody assumes that that's the standard when it's not. So every school can create their own standard of what eligibility would be under this new situation of COVID-19 and this shutdown. And I think that every school, in my viewpoint, if it was me and if I was a board attorney representing a school system, I would create a ESY consideration standard that is fairly flexible and responsive to our health and safety state emergency that was applied, to where now I can sit there and offer services to more kids, be able to document that I offered those services, and be able to document that these services were offered in response to our good faith efforts to provide the child services during the shutdown and during the period of time when services were not provided to any student. Because that documentation on the back end, guys, I highly suspect is going to be what is used by the federal government to determine who gets limited waivers and who doesn't. And I think those that will be able to show that they were responsive in providing something under this standard, and then also made a broader offering of ESY for the reasons given, instead of their normal traditional narrow scope that they're looking through, then at that point what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to make parents happy. And when parents are happy and they feel like a part of this response, when they feel like they are a collaborative member of the team, then they don't need to call me. They don't feel the need to call me. They don't want to call me. Okay, it's the schools that are not transparent. It's the schools that are bullies. It's the schools that are poor communicators with parents on the team. That's what drives parents to me. Okay, so this is why I'm telling you that you want to sit there and insulate yourself, in my viewpoint, for um, a bunch of due process complaints or a bunch of angry parents. Then broaden your offering of ESY and who would be eligible for it, to the point where you can document that and you can sit there and say, we offered services to Jimmy because of this 3-week shutdown without services, and then our inability to fully serve him per his IEP and LRE status. And there you go, guys. Now you have, in my viewpoint, a legally defensible IEP that would be very difficult for me to punch holes through. And parents out there might go, gosh darn it, James, why are you giving away the state secrets? Because, guys, I'm not we're busy enough. And believe me, this is going to be a very busy summer for me, I suspect. And good school systems need some good advice. All right. And what am I saying that isn't true? Because if as a parent, if they offered your child ESY, they made good attempts, they were communicating with you felt like a partner and a collaborative partner in the development of next year's IEP and in the solutions over these next few months, are you telling me you wouldn't be happy? You wouldn't be satisfied? You wouldn't be forgiving that it wasn't perfect? Of course you would. So there's nothing wrong with me letting the schools know that this is what I would suggest in order to create legally defensible positions because of this declared emergency. Now, will you be able to do anything about August to March? Not really, guys. Not really. Not really. That's a different standard that I'm going to apply. All right.